Welcome to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. Today is Thursday, February 1st, and we have a great show for you today. Today, our guest is Select Board Chair Bernard Greene. I spoke with him a few days ago, and we talked about the Select Board's recent accomplishments, what it's up to right now, and Chair Greene's long-term vision for the board. And I hope that you'll watch that interview right after we finish the news. The United States House of Representatives advanced articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. House Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene has said that Mayorkas willfully refused to comply with the law. Democrats and scholars counter that there is no evidence for impeachment. President Biden has decided how the U.S. will respond to a drone attack in Jordan that killed 3 U.S. service members. The details of that response have not yet been reported. Both chambers of Congress have been working on potential immigration and tax deals. It is now unlikely that either will pass. Former President Trump has been pressuring congressional Republicans to support neither bill. The Massachusetts Department of Transportation announced that new charging stations are up and running on the Mass Pike. Governor Healy has announced that the state will be opening a shelter site at the Roxbury Recreational Center. The plan is to house new arrivals and homeless people there until the end of May. Last week, the governor released her proposed FY 2025 budget, including an increase in funding for childcare and the MBTA. The House of Representatives will review her budget proposal and release and vote on its own version in April. The Brookline Select Board voted to increase the parking meter rate to $2 per hour across town, catching up with surrounding municipalities. The Transportation Board has stated that the new rate can generate up to $1.4 million in new revenue annually. The Brookline Food Pantry has been serving about 700 residents weekly, almost 4 times what it was serving before the COVID-19 pandemic. Police are looking for the owners of an emancipated dog found on the street last week. The dog was brought to the MSPCA Angel Animal House, where it has been recovering. Folks, I hope you'll stay with us here on Brookline Interactive Group. We're going to flip over to an interview recorded just a few days ago with Brookline Select Board Chair Bernard Greene. Stay tuned. And welcome back to TV on TV. As promised, today we have Chair of the Brookline Select Board, Bernard Greene. Bernard, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Tommy.
Now, the Select Board is busy year-round, and so this is as great a time as any to talk about the Select Board and sort of, past, present, and future. Before we get into that, Bernard, in just a couple of sentences, give us your bio with respect to the Select Board. How long have you been on? Tell us about your role.
Well, let me just start off by saying we moved to Brookline in 2002, and in 2006 I was asked to join town meeting. I ran, I won, and the rest is sort of history. That included service on the advisory committee, and then in 2016 I ran for Select Board and won my first race. I've won subsequent races in each of in 2 campaigns, and this is my 4th campaign for Select Board, or I'm in my 4th campaign for Select Board right now. I'm a retired lawyer. I was a public finance attorney, a general counsel with the Mass Clean Water Trust, and my entire legal career was in the area of public finance and investments, state investment advisory services.
And you're chair. For how long have you been chair?
I've been chair since Heather Hamilton resigned, which was February of 2023. Prior to that, I was chair for about a year and a half, or maybe 2 years. It was during a very interesting, very challenging period that included the George Floyd upsurge in the country, and also the pandemic. So it was a very difficult time, but I think we got through it fairly well.
So I want to start when we think about the select board with asking about the current tenor of the board. Obviously, the 5 people who serve on the board, they're not elected all in the same year. They don't run together. They have their own visions and their own models of leadership. And so it's sort of a roll the dice situation. How is the board working together right now, would you say?
I think it's working very well together. I really made a conscious effort to ensure that our conversations and our relationships have been smooth, even where we disagree. And many of us have many disagreements, and it's not just among the it's not just between the obvious members who disagree, but we all have our own viewpoints and priorities. What I've tried to do is to enable everyone to express their points of view and express it in a way that's not disruptive to just the smooth functioning of the board. I think people have noticed that the board appears to be smoother, much friendlier in its interactions among each other. And I think that makes it possible for us to achieve the goals that we have for the town.
And I'd like to bring up a recent achievement, I think, for the town and for the select board. The MBTA Communities Act got a lot of ink over the last year or so, and rightly so. Compliance was required by state law, but the guidelines were in flux, and there were many different ways to comply, and some folks wanted a more comprehensive approach, and others wanted a narrow, tailored approach. And of course, Brookline by Design and Brookline for Everyone received a lot of the attention for their efforts. I suspect the select board had a larger role than perhaps some folks appreciate. Can you sort of give us a sense for the select board's role in the compliance with the passing of the warrant articles, the zoning articles that resulted in compliance with the MBTA Communities Act?
Yeah. It's many times we see the end of a process and think that that's all that really happened, but a process starts at the beginning. And in the beginning, the select board was presented with a proposal by the planning department that the community, many members of the community felt had problems. The select board, all of us, listened to the concerns that were expressed by the community and tried to come up with a way to address them. We reached out to you, Tommy, and to the state, and we gave guidance, written guidance to the planning department in terms of the priorities that we felt had to be addressed to comply if we were to comply with the MBTA Communities Act. And as a result, we achieved a lot. A committee was proposed in a warrant article, and that committee was supported by the select board, and we let it come up with solutions that would both allow us to comply with the MBTA Communities Act, while at the same time addressing the concerns we had with respect to how the act would impact Brookline. For example, one of the issues in the guidance that the state put out was a prohibition on commercial mandates, and that was very important to Brookline, particularly on the Harvard Street corridor. It also limited our ability to use inclusionary zoning in order to increase affordable housing. So, we intervened, with the state and got some changes with respect to those two issues. And once, the committee that was established by the warrant article got working, they came up with a plan that addressed the concerns we had with respect to how Harvard Street would be rezoned, but also doing that without having to comply with the onerous provisions that the state included in the MBTA Communities Act, which were geared not to specific communities like Brookline, which was heavily built up, but was sort of a general approach that may have been relevant to a city like Brockton, for example. I'm not picking on Brockton, it's a fine city, but the act may have been relevant to Brockton, but just did not meet the needs of Brookline. And the committee came up with a way of proposing a rezoning of Harvard Street, but without those onerous provisions from the act, and complying with the act through presenting other areas of our town that had high density housing and could support additional density as the proposal or the plan for compliance with the act. So I mean that sort of dual approach, was a very successful way of addressing the concerns we had with the initial proposal for Harvard Street, as well as our need to comply with the act. That plan, it was called a consensus plan, was presented to town meeting, and one of our members, Paul Warren, spent a lot of time, along with other members of the select board, reaching out to various parties in Brookline by Design and Brookline for Everyone, as Tommy mentioned, to get agreement through compromise and other things, get agreement among those groups and among a broader sway of town meeting for what we call the consensus plan. And that plan passed overwhelmingly at town meeting, and has been recognized throughout the state as an example of how a town or municipality can comply with the act in a way that is positive to it and to the housing requirements and needs of the state.
So it wasn't just the politicians, it was in fact the staff that had a big role. And that, of course, happens under the direction of you as chair of the select board and the other select board members. And that's in addition to your role as select board members, cajoling and bringing folks along in that political process. I want to talk a little more about process. I want to talk about the process of the select board. The select board manages things large and small, things that impact lots of people in really clear ways, and things that are pretty narrow. When folks look at the agenda for the select board, they see a really long list, and they also see a bunch of things that they might not even be aware of, like a common victualer's license, right? These sort of esoteric things. And so the select board is juggling these things big and small. And I know that recently you as chair have taken a look at the processes and policies and procedures. Have you come to any conclusions? Have you made any changes about the way the select board works?
Yes, we made some significant changes. I started out by looking at the amount of time that the select board met every month, and we met every week. And I thought that was something that we should change. And I talked to the town administrator to figure out how can we reduce the amount of stuff on the select board's calendar so that it's possible for us to meet not 4 times a month, but maybe 3 times a month, not every month, but some months. And we came up with a proposal with the idea that with respect to common victualler licenses and what was called grants of location and other matters, instead of having a hearing and a vote at the select board, which takes up a lot of time, and it ties up town staff who have to be at the hearing after work hours. And so instead of doing it that way, the hearing on the licenses is held separately during the daytime with town staff and 1 member of the select board in attendance. That's usually Paul Warren. And then the select board puts on its miscellaneous agenda the approval of the licenses and grants of location based on the minutes of that earlier meeting, which is basically a report. Where there are issues in a particular license that the select board should discuss in greater detail, that can be brought to the select board for a full hearing at the select board instead of just a vote. So that was one way in which we, I think, improve the process by which the select board operates in that area. And it's been very successful and very good for both the select board and town staff, who work very, very hard. And I'm committed to the extent possible, reducing the type of the burdens that we place on them, so they can continue doing their great job for us.
And how about boards, committees, commissions, how you manage those, many of which you appoint and many of which one of the select board members serves on? Have you made any changes with those organizations and how they're managed?
We've set up procedures, and by the way, these policies and procedures are now on the select board's webpage, and so you can read them. And future policies and procedures will be placed there, which I think is very helpful for the community. But what we've done is to set up a procedure whereby boards and commissions report or give a report to the select board on a periodic basis. We were able to discuss with them how they can better function as a committee or board or commission, without sort of clashing with the select board on controversial issues. Now, of course, we have a couple of boards and commissions like the Park and Recreation Board, the Transportation Board, and a few others that are set up by state statute. So we're limited with respect to those. But I think working with boards and commissions generally in a cooperative manner has been very helpful in terms of coordinating and aligning what they do with the concerns and issues of the select board.
So I want to now look ahead. We sort of look backward and a little bit about what you've been up to recently. In the near term, give me something, and not everything, we don't have time, but give me something that you think that the select board is going to be working on, in the spring, maybe into the summer. What's a near term area of effort for the select board?
Well, what I'm trying to do is to figure out a way in which the select board could have more of a role in the budget process. Now, our role is limited because it's the advisory committee that actually issues the budget to town meeting. We're not experts or professionals. So our role has to take into consideration the professionals who staff town departments. But I want to figure out a way in which certain priorities that select board members have based on what they've heard from the community, the issues that they think are important from the standpoint of our overview of town operations, and incorporate those concerns, those priorities into the budget process. For example, one of the issues that one of our members has heard from the community is very important is our sidewalks and streets. We have increased funding for transportation infrastructure, but still there are issues with particularly sidewalks, in my opinion, that should be a priority for the town departments. Using this as an example, we present this as part of the budget process as a priority that the board thinks is important, and town staff looks at it and determines whether it's feasible for them to do X, Y, or Z, and determines how a problem can be addressed over what time frame, et cetera. But the point is that it's a way for the select board's priorities in terms of services that the town should or should not provide can be incorporated into the budget process. Right now, it's not. But what I'd like to see is the select board's concerns being part of the beginning of the budget process, which starts in September and goes through the rest of the year into the spring.
So, that's going to take some iteration, and I'm sure every year is in some sense a new budgetary adventure. At least that's how I feel at the State House with our budgets. Let's pivot to long term. The select board are the executive branch of the town. And while I think it's easy to get stuck on the day to day and talk about what's happening now, clearly it's important for the select board to have a long-term view and provide some long-term leadership. What are some things you think the select board should be focused on over the next several years or more?
Yeah, I would cite four things. First of all, the issue of housing affordability, which is this 800-pound gorilla in the room that we have to deal with. It's not an easy thing to wrestle with that gorilla, but we have to do it. Secondly, issues of the town's financial stability. Thirdly, despite even though it's under horrible attack nationwide, we still have to increase our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And finally, sustainability. Making our small impact on climate change and being a model for other communities around the state with respect to what can be done to minimize our negative impact on the climate. So in terms of housing affordability, look, I mean, that is not an easy job. There are only small things that we can do because we're dealing with a statewide, nationwide market, housing market that bases its pricing on things like location, location, location. And Brookline is as a great location, particularly for very high income professionals working in Boston or in Harvard Square or Nubian Square now that Ben Franklin Institute is going to be moving down there, and the other institutions down there. So we're a perfect location, and people with a lot of money would want to live here because it's convenient, and that puts pressure on our housing stock, price pressure on our housing stock. We have to figure out a way of addressing that. There are a few tools we have. I mentioned inclusionary zoning earlier. That's one tool. It helps a little bit, particularly with low income housing. We have various procedures or rules such as demolition delays that can delay the demolition of our existing housing stock that, while not cheap, is affordable for many people in the middle income brackets. We have to figure out what other tools there are that are available to address housing affordability. For example, the city of Boston, much different than Brookline, but the city of Boston is doing something, planning to do something that we should look at, and that is use property that they own for affordable housing. Now, we don't own a lot of property, but maybe there are a few things that along those lines that we can do.
I have no doubt we could talk about housing all night long. Housing's big, and frankly, DEI and sustainability have been discussed a lot on this show and other places. So it's all right. I really want to pin you down on town financial stability. That's maybe a conversation that's ripe. And I'd like to spend at least just the few minutes we have left today talking about the select board's role in that town stability of the future. Give us a few words on that.
Yeah, our roles, look, I mean, we're all operating within the context of Proposition 2.5, which makes it very difficult in many ways. But that just means that in our management of our budget, we have to be very, very careful and prudent. The tools that the select board has to do that, are the budget process that I mentioned earlier, and also how the select board and the school committee can interact and ensure that school costs are kept within reason, given the needs, educational needs that we have, that students have here in town. Our town school partnership is basically the forum in which we have those discussions, and that is a small tool to ensure financial stability, and just the process of building our budget and thinking long term. What are our long-term needs? What are the long-term risks we have? And how can we ensure that we've provided provided resources for those needs, whether that's in terms of controlling costs, or in terms of maintaining the stability funds that we have in order to maintain our AAA rating, so that our bond costs are relatively low. So I mean, there are a number of things we are doing, and we have to continue, because financial stability is is what makes all the other things that we're interested in doing in town possible. So.
Well, Chair Greene, I want to thank you for coming on TV here on Brookline Interactive Group. I also want to thank you for your many, many years of public service, nearly 9 on the select board, time before that on advisory committee, time before that as an elected town meeting member from precinct 7, if I recall correctly. And this town is better for your efforts. I'm grateful for them. Thanks for coming on the show. Best of luck in this spring. I know you've got quite a few things going on, and I'm sure I'll see you around town.
Okay, thank you, Tommy. I always appreciate coming on your show, and I appreciate all the things you do for Brookline and have done for many, many years, both in the state legislature and before.
Well, no doubt you and I will keep doing it, and we'll keep doing it here on Brookline Interactive Group. Folks, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, thank you.